Welcome back to CBS This Morning. We begin with breaking news. An historic day on Capitol Hill, where the House of Representatives is expected to formally impeach the President of the United States today. This will be the third time that the House lawmakers have taken this extraordinary action in 230 years. At around 10:30 this morning Eastern Time, members will begin at least 6 hours of debate on the two articles of impeachment against President Trump. The House is expected to vote late in the day, and both articles are expected to pass mostly along party lines.
One thing to watch today, the 31 Democrats from districts the president won in 2016. Only 2 of them say they plan to vote against impeachment. They are Colin Peterson of Minnesota, chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, and Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, who says he'll switch to the Republican Party after the vote.
Democrat Jared Golden of Maine says he'll vote for Article 1, abuse of power, but against Article 2, obstruction of Congress. CBS News legal analyst Jonathan Turley and Kim Wehle join us now from Washington. Jonathan testified at the request of House Republicans during a Judiciary Committee hearing on the legal standard for impeachment. Good morning to both of you. Kim, I want to start with you, and I'm hoping that you can clarify something perplexing for me here. The Senate rules for impeachment say, I do solemnly swear, this is the oath that each senator takes, I do solemnly swear that in all things pertaining to the trial of the impeachment of blank, I will do impartial justice. That is the oath. And yet we have Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell saying publicly he's not impartial. Can you square those two things for me?
It's very difficult. He's also said this is really about Republicans versus Democrats being on team red versus team blue, but it really is about the scope of the Constitution, whether there are guardrails that are going to be enforced for the office of the presidency. You think about Simone Biles going to the Olympics, and it's already been predetermined how hard she works. No matter what she does, she will not win a medal. That's basically what the Senate Majority Leader is saying here. And we have to remember the impeachment process is about the office of the presidency, not about the man. It's easy to get caught up in Mr. Trump personally. But going forward, we have to think about what this does to the scope of power that we are handing off to future presidents and future generations. And that's what makes his comments, I think, so troubling.
What impact do you think, Jonathan, this could have on future presidents, picking up on Kim's point?
Well, it's going to have a significant impact, and I think it'll be a largely dysfunctional one. The problem I have is that this sets the standard quite low for impeachment. You know, they ultimately rejected the 4 articles that I primarily testified against, including bribery, and they went with the 2 that I thought were legitimate. But they did not obviously follow my advice in trying to build a record to support those 2 counts or articles. And the problem I have is that, judging on how they define these 2 articles, you could impeach every living president on this type of allegations. The most troubling for me is obstruction of Congress. They set an abbreviated period for investigation, arguably the shortest investigation of any presidential impeachment, depending on how you count the Johnson impeachment days. And then they said if you don't turn over the evidence during that period, you're obstructing Congress. Well, President Trump went to court to challenge the necessity of handing over that material. Both Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon were allowed to go all the way to the Supreme Court, where they ultimately lost. Nixon resigned soon afterwards. My concern is that this really does seem like you are making an appeal to the court into a high crime or misdemeanor.
Well, you did say that you didn't think they had enough evidence, that you thought that the impeachment was rushed. Why does the Democrats' timeline matter?
Well, it matters because the Democrats know that this will fail. This record is incomplete. It has conflicts. The only way that you could convict a president on this record is to literally make every inference against his position. And that's basically what my co-witnesses said, is that you can base this on inferences. The problem is there's direct evidence out there. The House never subpoenaed John Bolton. They never subpoenaed Mike Mulvaney. They never subpoenaed Giuliani. These are people with direct information. And they burned 4 months that they could have gone to court to compel this testimony. That's a dangerous record to impeach a president on, because it's easily manufactured against any president.
Kim, the president refuses to participate in this inquiry. does that undermine his complaints about lack of due process?
Sure. And people, I think, rightly compare what's happening here to an indictment that comes out of a grand jury. So a grand jury meets secretly, the prosecutors present evidence, and that produces a charging document that could send regular people like you or me to jail or even to the electric chair. It's quite a serious consequence. Here, the President of the United States had an opportunity to call witnesses, to bring his lawyers before the equivalent of the grand jury, before the House Judiciary Committee, in advance of actually issuing the articles of impeachment. And he said, I don't want to participate in that. So at the end of the day, what we're talking about here with this president is keeping his job. Of course, it's an important job. It's one that people we elected him on, but it's not the same as going to jail.
Jonathan, the president called you a liberal law professor. I don't think he meant it as a compliment. Can you just tell me what you thought about that? Then we gotta go.
This is in his letter to Pelosi. I won't associate myself with that single line of the letter. But he wanted to create an indelible record. He did with that letter.
All right. And you're in the letter. Thank you, Jonathan.
And of course, we should point out, thank you both, we should point out that Democrats say they have to go at this pace with impeachment because there is an election coming and the court system would take a long time. The abuse of power charge could influence this vote. That's what their timetable response is. Jonathan and Kim, thank you very much. We always appreciate it. CBS News will bring you a special report later this morning on this historic House debate on the vote to impeach President Trump.